Building more muscle as a natural lifter doesn't need to be that complex. Now, it's not easy, that's for sure, but I don't think it's as complicated as people may believe. And I think predominantly the reason for this is the overconsumption of social media. We're exposed to so much conflicting information that it's very hard to identify what to do. And this is the problem with a lot of my new clients. They all watch and are influenced by large amounts of various influencers online, and they end up overthinking and kind of unsure about what to do. And premature program hopping is a big problem, and it's a very frustrating experience. So this video is going to serve as a reminder to keep things simple, to cut through the fluff, and to motivate you to continue working towards your main objective as a natural lifter. It's likely that in reality 90% or more of the social media content you're going to be watching in the fitness sphere is going to be complete garbage, and it's going to lead you astray, especially the mainstream stuff, the really popular stuff, which is of course what you're predominantly going to be viewing. It's going to make this journey just that little bit more frustrating for you. And even some of the guys that do talk sense and have tremendous physiques have kind of got into that position by accident because of the genetics that they have. Now, not taking anything away from them, no doubt they would have worked hard to achieve that, but it's hard for them sometimes to convey just how they've built their physique because it's been relatively easy in comparison to someone else that has weaker genetics and have had to grind for much longer and develop solutions to overcome problems and whatnot. So just be very careful with social media content. At the end of the day, I think it's a good idea to cut right back. Look at a book, read a book perhaps, commit yourself to a theory or a program for at least 9 months, and just do it that way instead. Marry yourself to a concept for a good amount of time before then moving on to something else perhaps. But when you've got all this information coming to you constantly, just bombarding you from different angles, it's going to be almost impossible. Let's go back to basics, do a bit of research, find something you're interested in, buy the book, read it, and then maybe give that a go. Okay, so let's get started into kind of the point that I want to convey within this video. Now, I'll keep this as simple as I can to begin with, guys. When it comes to natural bodybuilding, the stronger guy will almost always be the bigger guy. And there aren't really any exceptions to that rule. Now, there are discrepancies which essentially muddy the waters, and I'll get to that later. But by and large, the stronger guy will be the bigger guy. And that's essentially what we need to chase. If we see a physique that is more impressive than us, that is natural, we have to look at their lifts, look at the kind of weights that they're lifting, and try to drive to those numbers, because more often than not, if we're smaller, less muscular, we're going to be weaker. If you look at a guy in the gym that has a standout chest, look at their bench press, look at their dips, it's probably going to be more impressive than yours. Look at the guy with amazing quads, going to be a great squatter, or have a very impressive leg press, for example. And we can use this example here, AJ Morris, really impressive physique, of course. I'd say a typical ectomorph, quite a slight build, but we look at his quad development, his standout body part, super impressive. And then we look at his hack squat, movement that's directly going to stress that particular muscle, and we can see why over time he's developed such large quads. Because he's just so strong in that area. And it usually correlates, guys. And now, knowing this, why then aren't we spending the vast majority of our energy and focus in the gym on becoming stronger? That is the problem with social media content, guys, because a lot of the good training that we need to do as natural lifters is going to be boring, and it's going to be monotonous, and it's going to involve a very long period of time just essentially grinding, trying to increase the weight you're going to be lifting on certain movements. That's the reality of it. A lot of the social media stuff will steer you away from this. They'll overcomplicate it. This is a quick reminder for my affordable online coaching. It's only £79 a month. You can cancel when you want. There's a 2-month money-back guarantee. So if you're someone that's busting your balls in the gym but can't seem to improve that physique past the beginner status, then you might want to consider coaching. Links in the description box below. Alternatively, if you're not quite ready, I have a free newsletter, Natural Gains. Again, the link for that is in the description box. Let's say you're training with a gym partner, which is quite common for a lot of people. You're both of a similar height, similar body fat percentage, but that guy that you're training with is maybe 5k heavier and slightly more muscular. So you go for a full body workout, and across the board he's probably lifting a little bit more weight on each exercise than yourself. Now let's say you have really good hamstrings, standout hamstrings. His hamstrings are perhaps a little bit weaker. So that's the one lift where you're going to be matching him or bettering him on, in terms of weight statistically. So that would show you, that would tell you, well, it's just about getting that strength up. You're chasing him then on those other lifts to try to eventually match him in terms of aesthetics. It really is so simple, but it's it's very difficult to grasp this. And this is something that I really kind of promote with my clients, for example, if they're comparing their physiques to mine. Well, let's look at your strength. Where does your strength lie on basic movements compared to mine? If it's lower, then you have to chase those numbers to try to match me to. If you ever have any hope in hell of achieving the physique that I have, you have to become similar in terms of strength. And the physiques that I'm chasing, they're all stronger than me. So that's my purpose. I have to become stronger. But it has to be done the right way, guys. And that's where the discrepancies make things a little bit more complicated. So let's talk about genetics first and foremost, limb length and muscle insertions, because that can muddy the waters. So let's say a guy is perhaps 5'4" compared to say 6 foot, okay, and they have shorter femurs. So naturally they're going to be quite good at the squat. That movement is going to be, well suited to them. Plus, because the femur length being shorter, the muscle mass is bunched up. It's spread out over a shorter distance, and it's going to look more visually impressive and hence give the impression of a larger muscle. So let's say they can get their quads to a certain level at 140 kilos, and you, being the taller guy at 6 foot with a longer femur, can lift the same weight, albeit with more difficulty because of the form discrepancies due to the height. But you get to the same weight, your quads are not going to look the same. In fact, they'll probably look less impressive. Because why? They're spread out over a longer distance. So that is also, very important to consider. Can sometimes confuse people when you look at someone and think, well, hang on a minute, their physique's not really that impressive, but they're really strong. Well, there's a lot more that goes into it. In terms of where the muscle is actually inserted as well. We can look at the biceps and use that as an example. Someone with very high insertions on the bicep can develop this massive peak because the bicep is bunched up, but lack the overall girth of the arm, for example. Same with the triceps. So it can be a little bit deceiving. So when looking at strength on a movement versus the size of the muscle that's attributed with that movement, we have to consider the shape of the muscle and the genetic structure that goes into that. All things being equal, though, the guy that is lifting more weight, that's developed a greater ability to contract under load, is going to be bigger than the guy that is weaker. That if they're lifting, in the same way and have the same genetic structure. The bench press is another great example, guys. And sometimes this can mislead people. They see a guy with a big bench and they think, oh, hang on a minute, his chest really isn't that well developed. But you look at the way that he's built, his front delts may be very genetically strong. So you have to look at the way the stress is distributed among all of the muscles that are working within that movement. His triceps may be bigger than yours as well. When you combine all of that muscle together, yeah, he's bigger than you as a consequence of lifting 20 more kilos consistently on his bench press. So it can be a little bit deceiving. The second discrepancy has a lot to do with form. It's really important to recognise this. Are we lifting in a way that allows us to increase the ability of a muscle to contract under greater levels of load? Ultimately, that's what it's about. Not merely artificially inflating the strength on paper by manipulating the form that you're using to make that lift more easy. And that's where, again, it can be misleading. So we use a bench press. Another great example, you've got two guys, one lifting 120 for 5, one lifting 110 for 5, but form is very different. The first guy has shorter arms. His grip is wider. He uses a strong arch in his lower back, and he's bouncing the bar off his chest. The second guy, although less impressive, as in weight on the bar, he's utilising a slightly narrower grip, has longer arms, and he's using less of a lower back arch. So that second guy, despite the weight being lower on the bar, may actually be stronger in a true sense. His pectoral muscles and his front delts may have a greater ability to contract properly under more load, despite the differences. And that's where it's misleading, and that sometimes can create this kind of misconception where people look at the stronger guy and think, oh, strength's not everything, but there are a lot of variables that go into this. And that's the same across all of the movements. Any of the movements that you see in the gym, it's very, very important to recognise the form that someone's using and whether or not they're making that movement more difficult and relying on actual contractile ability, or perhaps they, mitigating some of that by form and the manipulation of that. This is why exercise selection and the design of your program is just so important, guys. Every movement must have a purpose. Is it driving you forwards in terms of increasing strength and developing a greater ability to contract under load? You know, we can take the chest, for example, and we can maybe do 3 movements. Your flat, your incline, and some form of decline, maybe a dip. If you're becoming stronger on all of those 3 with good form and consistent form across the board over time, then you're going to develop bigger pecs. It's as simple as that. So why then would you focus perhaps lots of your time and energy on the dumbbell fly? Now, I'm not saying the dumbbell fly isn't a good exercise. Any isolation has its moment and has its place. But if you're military pressing, let's say 50 kilos, and you've got a guy in the gym that has amazing shoulders, we see someone online that has amazing delts, that's natural, and you can see that he's military pressing 90, then why on earth are you spending your time doing lateral raises in the hope that somehow your shoulders are magically going to balloon up? You've got to chase the numbers, guys. You've got to get your military press up to 90. And I'm not saying that isolations can't help improve your strength. If you improve your strength on a lateral raise over time, your shoulders will become slightly bigger. But it's much harder to improve the strength, especially if you're utilising dumbbells on isolation, than it is on your big main movements, where you might be able to take those increments up more consistently. And if you're using mini plates, you know, pretty much every week, you can take the weight up maybe 250 to 500 grams each week. Whereas on the lateral raise, you're stuck at 8 kilos. Or where are we going from here? You know, your next increment is 10k. You're going to have to wait a long time to get there because of the gap. So we could use cables instead and use, you know, micro plates on that perhaps. So you have to be very aware of your exercises and why they're in your protocol. And really, when push comes to the shove, guys, we need to get stronger on your main compounds. Compare your strength to someone else's, and if they have a bigger physique than you, they're probably going to be stronger. We need to try to match that strength if we ever hope to achieve a similar level of muscularity. There is no way around it, guys, as a natural lifter. So now here comes your job. You've got to then go away and work out what movements you need to do to build the physique that you want, and then how to get stronger on those movements. And you know, I'm not going to go into that topic for this video. This is more of a reminder to keep it simple and try not to get bogged down with all the fluff on social media, and don't veer too far away from the topics outlined in this video. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know in the comment section below. Give me a like, and don't forget to check out my website for coaching, for free programs, Excel tools, and my free newsletter. See you on the next one. Stay strong.